Hi, you guys. Welcome back. This is Richard Sachs. This is Lost Arts Radio, and we have the return of a guest that I've been hoping for a long time, that we've talked about quite a few times in between, who visited us about 4 years ago, and that's Dr. William Bengston. And we're going to get into a review of background and then what he's doing now. But basically, the reason that I wanted to get him back was because he did a series of experiments that I felt should have been, if we had honest media, which I know is a total joke, we don't have anything like that in the mainstream media, but if we had, what he did would have been headlines all over the world for a long time. And there are all kinds of, set jokes that people know about of, if such and such a person cured cancer or something, this is what everybody would think. And they said that a lot about Trump. If he cured cancer, the media would still hate him and say you put all those cancer doctors out of work. And there are all kinds of if you cured cancer lines, that you're supposed to say. But the thing is that in many different ways, physical protocols and other ones, cancer has been cured. It's not a secret, other than to people that only see the corporate media. And one of the ways that it's been cured is really interesting, because it was in animal trials. It's since gone further. And in the particular one I'm thinking of, the animals stayed on the same diet, and in fact, they weren't touched. And it worked 100%. And you would think that would be known everywhere by now, but it's not. So what I want to do with Dr. Bengston, who is the one who did that experiment and demonstration, has done a lot since then with it, is go back to before he got interested in any of this stuff, a little bit of review of background leading up to it, conventional background, university association, stuff like that. And then we'll get into what's happening now. So welcome, Dr. Bengston, and thank you for the time.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So what did you used to do before you were interested in any of this stuff, and where did you end up getting involved in?
So where did I go wrong is the question?
Yeah. When you thought you wanted to be all involved in the academic world and that kind of stuff, what did you do?
I had a traditional upbringing and traditional university education and all of those kinds of good things. And the actual reason that I got into healing and other associated craziness activities was I used to have a bad back, a chronic bad back, and I actually had to give up a swimming scholarship in college because after I was a butterflyer, and after about 100 meters or so, the back just didn't go, and I was in basically chronic pain.
Wow.
And I assumed that was just life. You're going to have to make accommodations and all that, and still went on through normal life. But I met a guy. It's the old I met a guy.
Yeah.
I met a guy who claimed he was a psychic, or claimed he could do psychic things. And I said, I kind of moaned and groaned. But I knew something about research methods, and I knew something about how to design studies. And so I decided to put this guy to a test to show that all his psychic craziness was probably some illusion or delusion of some sort.
What about him made you think it was even worth checking out?
I met him when I was actually lifeguarding. And he was a member of the club that I was lifeguarding at, and I heard there was a psychic around the pool, and I said, well, that's interesting, it's more than your basic, it's not your typical answer. And I said I'd like to meet him, and so I was introduced to him, and we sat around for a couple of minutes on one of my breaks, and he told me that he had just discovered that he can do psychometry, which is token object reading. And I said, well, that's wonderful. And I whipped out a wallet, handed it to him, and I said, do me some psychometry, just to start out. And he told me some things while holding my wallet that made no sense whatsoever. And I thought, well, this guy's a loser. And one of the things he said is, for example, he told me a number of things. He told me that I had a problem with my car and I needed to take care of it right away. And I said, I really don't have a problem with my car, and all that kind of stuff. He told me about a conversation. He described two people. I could recognize them. He described a conversation they had just had. I said, it's not possible. One thing after the other, I was profoundly unimpressed.
Okay.
As I was driving home, the bottom fell out of my car.
Wow. But there was nothing wrong with it, though, right?
But there was nothing wrong with it, but the bottom fell out. And I said to one of the people he described, did you ever have this conversation? And she said, how did you know that? And then, so all of the stuff he told me was true. I just didn't know the right answer.
Okay.
And I thought, maybe I should pay attention to this.
Good answer. So how did you test it?
Well, I gave him many more objects to read. I dragged him down to the American Society for Psychical Research. I dragged him into the labs of Maimonides Medical Center in Brooklyn, and we did all sorts of tests. I did some double-blind tests of him being able to read or to come up with a diagnosis of people who were checking into hospitals. I did all sorts of tests. I could not beat this guy. It's that simple, and it sounds absurd. If someone said this to me, I would be extremely skeptical, but nonetheless, this guy morphed, if you will, from being a token object reader, a psychometrist, I guess, and when he was giving readings, people, if the people had physical problems, they were alleging that the physical problems were leaving them as he was doing the reading.
Wow.
Even he thought this was crazy. And he was already crazy. So I thought he was crazy. He thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
And then,
in other words, he thought he could see these things, but it wouldn't have any practical use.
well, he was just doing readings, and he would be picking up physical symptoms on his own body of what the person was experiencing. And it turns out, allegedly, the people were saying it was leaving them as he was talking about this, and they were getting fixed. And one day, sitting in a kitchen, he's telling me a story similar to this, and I, finally dawned on me, it came by freight. I'm sitting here with back pain. I've been in pain for years. Mm-hmm. Why don't you ask him for help? And so just at that moment, he said, ow, somebody has a back problem. And I said, I didn't say anything. And he goes running around trying to figure out who might have a back problem. And I said, me? He said, keep your pain to yourself. I said, I got a better idea. Fix it. And I leaned over a kitchen table. He put his hands on my back. Last back pain I ever had.
Wow.
So I had two choices. One, pretend this didn't happen.
Yeah.
Pretend it was a psychosomatic problem in the back anyway. Pretend it was going to go away anyway. Try to make the, the phenomenon go away, or...
That's the most common approach, too.
Oh, yeah. But I'm not that bright. So I took the second path, and the second path is, let's see if there's anything behind this stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so what did you do?
I watched him put I was the first person he ever put his hands on to actually deliberately try to heal. I said, give me your hands and let me try it on somebody else. So I'm dragging around the poor guy's hands, putting them on people, and we watched their responses. So this was simply anecdotal clinical applications at first, a few hundred people. And we started to see a couple of patterns, some things he was particularly good at, some things he wasn't so good at. And one of the things he was particularly not good at was benign growths. So even, kind of almost irrelevant benign growths, no matter what he did, no effect. Okay. But malignancies, he was very, very, very good.
How fast did they get better?
Some fast, some slow. There was an enormous amount of variation. Okay. And that has continued to this day. So there's no way for me to predict speed of a cure or speed of a failure. These are still things that I need to spend quite a bit of time working on.
Did he have any idea what he was doing?
No. After a while, he kind of... he got wrapped up in himself a little bit and kind of got puffed up, but I don't think in any meaningful way he understood what he was doing. So we just watched hundreds of people go through this process, and started to have crowds come to him, and he would put his hands on people, a person, and put his hands on someone else and someone else and someone else, and like that. After the first couple hundred healings are interesting, but after a while, there was nothing I could do with them. There was nothing I wasn't learning anything other than something is going on here that's reasonably significant. And so I decided that we needed to do this not under haphazard conditions, but rather do it under controlled conditions.
Just out of curiosity, over the years after that, did he develop it into anything significant, or do you know?
I don't really know. He and I stayed together for a couple of more years, but when I went into the lab and started to do the lab work, I was doing it initially around him, meaning using him as the subject.
Right.
And looking for seriously controlled conditions with mice and cell cultures and all that. He didn't want any part of that. He did it first, and then he didn't after that. And he and I then went our separate ways. And we went our separate ways, not under the best of circumstances.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So your main piece of lab equipment was gone.
Yeah.
And that must have been a challenge to figure out how to keep going at that point.
It was. One day, actually, at his place, I ran into a guy who was at the time, the head of the geology department, of all things, at City University of New York. And he and I bonded pretty quickly and essentially forever. We sat there and we were commiserating about that this is an interesting phenomenon, but we're never going to get anywhere watching people get fixed. We're not learning anything other than people are getting fixed. The responses of people were also extraordinarily interesting and unexpected, at least to me. I didn't understand this world at all. So I'm going in there naive, and I'm watching it. I had assumed that people would want to get fixed if they had a problem.
Yeah.
It turns out that's reasonably naive. The most common response to being healed is anger.
Right.
I didn't see this coming, but people were having their identity taken away. They're particularly people with long-term chronic illnesses. Let's say, use myself with a bad back. I wasn't that debilitated, but if I had to go through life and my sense of self was, here's a person with a back problem, this is who I am, and I need assistance, and I need all those kinds of things. If this guy came and fixed me, it sounds pretty obvious, or it did to me at the time, well, that's a good thing. But if it's taking away the person's identity, there can be emotional responses that aren't good.
Yeah, that must have been a surprise. So you eventually figured out what was going on with that, I guess.
Well, I don't know that I completely figured it out. I knew that I was getting tired of watching people get fixed. Because from a purely selfish point of view, I wasn't learning much. They were getting fixed and getting angry, or starting to get fixed, and they'd run away, or forgetting that they ever needed to be fixed. And people are screwy. This guy, Dave Crinsley, and I bonded, the head of the geology department at City University, and we said, let's do some really seriously airtight studies that nobody can give me a counter to.
Right. Before you get into that, just one more question. The people that got fixed, did it last, or do you know?
I don't know. Probably I don't know past 25 years for the old, but at least 25 years of anybody I know. But whether it eventually came back or anything like that, we've long since lost touch.
Yeah, but you notice pretty long-term stability in the improvement, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think in particular for something like cancer, I don't know of a single instance of it ever coming back.
Okay, all right, great. So you were going to set up experiments, but the center person that it was all going to be based around was gone. So how did you figure out?
Well, he wasn't gone yet. So Dave and I sat around and said, let's see what we can do. And Dave was kind of a big deal in academia. And, if I went through some of his accomplishments, they're reasonably impressive. And he used to be the acting provost, and I think he was the acting president of City University in New York. And so a lot of people, he was connected, and a lot of people owed him this favor or that favor. And he said, let me call in all the chips. This is worth looking into. And so he went to the head of the biology department, and he said, we need an airtight case that, doesn't have any ambiguity to it whatsoever. And shortening the story, some biologists at City University had been working for 20 years on a particular mammary cancer in mice. And this mammary cancer in the field of oncology is extremely well studied. There are more than 2,000 published papers on these mice.
So this is what they call breast cancer in humans, right?
Yeah.
Even though mice don't look the same, they have mammary glands which produce the milk.
Oh, sure.
And that's where you get the same cancer, right?
And so the short version is, in experimental biology, what you do is you take a mouse, you match it to a particular kind of condition, in this case cancer, a mammary cancer, you inject it with a certain number of cells, and then you watch what happens. And what happens is, 100% of the time, all of the mice that had been this mammary cancer, all of the mice that had been injected with this mammary cancer were dead within 27 days.
Okay.
And
you knew the steps of progression that they went through were all basically the same.
If I were showing you pictures, the non-metastatic cancer, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it basically takes over the mouse.
Now, in humans, it tends to be metastatic, though, right? In the late stages.
Yeah, some types.
Okay.
Some types, but not all.
Not this one.
Not this one.
Okay. All right.
So, and we had treated a whole bunch of people with metastatic breast cancer before we got to mice.
Okay.
But in this particular mouse model, the tumor stays external, and you can measure it, and everybody loves this mouse. And so what we said, if you can, since it's so well understood and it's been mathematically modeled, what happens if you put healing into the equation? I mean, that's really the question.
That's it.
And I was thinking he would do it, because I'm not a healer, for crying out loud.
Sure.
So he would do it. And then a lot of time to get this thing together, finally get it together. Mice come in, and this is where this guy and I went our separate ways. He said, I'm not going to do it. And I said, we just spent 6 months setting this up at a not inconsiderable cost.
Did he mention anything about the reason that he wasn't going to do it?
I don't want to go down that road. I think he was going a little squirrely. Okay,
that's fine.
So I would call whatever he had to say at that point unacceptable to my ears.
Sure.
And so we were stuck with mice and the healer who disappeared.
Right.
And so I had spent a lot of time around him. I had participated in some healings just as kind of a second fiddle kind of a thing. And I was talked into, well, you got to do it now. Here are the mice. We have no plan B.
That's right.
Yeah. And I thought, me, give me a break. So the short version is I got some cancerous mice. I put my hands around the cage and we watched, and the tumors grew. I assumed, and I'm wrong about almost everything. I assumed that if I got to them early enough after injection, we could prevent the tumors from growing. You think of it like, you're zapping them, and it's akin to radiation.
Were you trying to mimic what you understood that he was doing, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And so I thought, well, if it works, then we'll keep the cancer from ever progressing. And I had in my head a mental map of how this would happen. None of it worked. None of it.
Okay, let me ask you one question about that phase.
Yeah.
When you were at the beginning stages and he was gone, so you were officially the healer by promotion.
Yep.
And within the company, you took that position. And what were you doing that failed? I mean, it wasn't how you held your hands. So I assume it was a state of mind or attention or emotion or.
Well, I'm not following what you mean by I failed.
Okay, you said it didn't work in the beginning.
Oh no, I said I'm wrong about everything.
Oh, okay. Did it? did it work, what you first did, trying to mimic him?
In my head, it wasn't working because I thought that the tumor shouldn't grow at all. And it turns out the tumor grew, and I tried to call off the experiment.
Okay.
And so I said, look, it's not working. Here comes the tumor. The tumor's getting bigger every day. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. And my heartless geological friend who thinks of mice as rocks said, keep going a couple more days. And I said, but it's not working. I'm showing you the place of belief here. I didn't believe it. It didn't. It's growing. It's growing. It's growing. And then the tumor actually started to ulcerate. And I was really freaking out because I don't believe this stuff. And I'm saying, it's not working, folks. We need to call this off. Do it a couple more days. And then the tumor suddenly imploded and the mice were cured for their lifespan.
Okay, so I think it's pretty significant. This was your initial efforts at this thing.
Yeah.
What were you trying to do in the the protocol? It wasn't hand placement. It was an internal protocol that you were trying to follow to mimic him. What was that?
If you were looking at me, it would look like I was sitting, standing, otherwise being around a cage or cages of mice with my hands on the outside.
Right.
That's what it would look like. Internally, I was doing a process or a method called cycling. Rapid image cycling, I call it now. And in the rapid image cycling, I'm going through a protocol that would take more than this show to explain. It takes, I got hours and hours of explanation, but I'm not hiding. I have everything published. Everything is free to anybody. It's out there, and you can look it up, but it's a rapid image cycling is what the bottom line. And I'm going from a selfish series of images of something that I want, imaged as if it's already done, and going from image disconnected to image, disconnected to image, disconnected to image at an extreme rapid rate.
And this is what you picked up from the psychic originally that he was doing before that?
The two of us kicking around what in heaven's name is going on really came up with this as a team.
Okay, that he agreed that this must be what I'm doing, basically.
He said this is the way to replicate what he's doing.
Okay, good. And so I know we don't have anywhere near enough time to really do this in detail, so I'm going to try to ask specific strategic questions that'll kind of put in a few dots, and then if people want to get the CDs or go to other places to get the rest of it, they can fill in the picture.
Yeah, again, it's not a secret, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing, coming from no familiarity with this whole idea, is that you said image to image to image in your mind, okay? And you mentioned the word disconnected. So
the images are disconnected. They don't tell a story.
That's what I mean. Just separate standalone images in a sequence, basically, right?
Yep.
And so when looking at one of those images, just whatever it is, the qualifications of what it would be is something that you want in your life.
Yes.
Or could it be something you want for somebody else, or is it always
without permission? That's an ethical boundary.
Yeah, okay, that's important.
That's an ethical boundary.
Right. Okay. So taking a really simple example that doesn't take time to explain, let's say you want a new car.
Fine. Yep.
The reason doesn't matter. You just know you want a new car.
Yep.
And so the image, it's not like what I'm trying to get at here is it's not like a magazine picture of a new car. It's an emotional component of that picture.
Perfect.
Right? Otherwise, the picture doesn't work for this.
Probably not. But yes.
If you feel nothing about it.
There's a great deal of detail and emotion that goes into the image. So I'm not good with cars. I'll call it a red Tesla. I don't know what I just said, but I want a red Tesla. Fine. So I'm driving the red Tesla down the highway, just big smile on my face, having a ball.
Okay. So rather than just pictures, these are scenes.
Yes.
Almost, right?
But the images go so rapidly that you can't really focus on anything.
Right. But if you were looking at what, like a freeze frame of a reel to reel movie, just to understand what each still picture looks like as you run them past your eye and they blur into motion, each one is like a standalone scene of you having already gotten something you want and what it feels like. Is that accurate?
Yes, but where we diverge on the film comparison is that the film tells the story from beginning, middle, to end. And my first image is the red Tesla. My second image is hiking in the woods. My third image is, and so it doesn't tell any coherent story, and the pictures are, for all practical purposes, random.
Right. And so when they're all disconnected and not related in the spool of the movie, instead of looking like a coherent moving picture, when you look at them in rapid succession, they blur into a fog, basically.
Chaos. Yep.
Okay.
Now, I've since studied, because I try to go into what's the physiology, what goes on to the healer, what goes on with the healee, and all of those things. So I have... I've done EEG studies, what happens when you do this image cycling. I have functional MRI studies, done at multiple medical schools. So I've looked into, taken a deep dive into some of this stuff. But your description of the emotional component to a picture is accurate.
Okay, yeah, if boiling it down to the basic component, it seems like it's the scene that you can relate to and you feel something about, and you're feeling that it's real and that it's already happened.
Yeah. And I'd like to make one more distinction. It's not fantasizing. It's not daydreaming. So, for example, the entire time that we've been talking, I'm doing that technique.
All right. What's the difference between that and daydreaming then?
Daydreaming is I'm driving down in my red Tesla and I'm thinking about all the happy times and I'm relating to an emotion and boy, wouldn't this be fun and all those kinds of things. In this, I'm going much faster than that.
Okay, so speed is a big difference.
Speed matters.
And how many of those separate pictures do you need to make a cycle work?
Well, we don't know. We shoot to begin with 20.
Okay.
But I that's not a magical number. I mean, people have started with far fewer. People have ended up with far more. The record, I think, is 94 different images. So
it needs more investigation, basically, to see what the limits might be.
I don't know I don't know if you do it with four. My suspicion is, and I'm probably wrong, but my suspicion is that what really matters is that you don't daydream, you don't dwell on, you don't focus.
It's got to not be in the front of your calculating mind, right?
Absolutely not.
It's in the back somewhere.
And you start calculating, and then it becomes second nature. Just as when you learn any new skill, you pay attention at first, you're focused, you're practicing, you're doing all those things, and then eventually, if you get good at something, it becomes mindless.
Okay, so you're moving it from one department of your mind to another.
Probably.
And when it gets to the other, it starts having an effect.
It starts having an effect.
And when you said the words healer and healee, then we get into the permission issue. So how does that work?
Well, the mice, honestly, didn't give permission. But let me tell you a quick anecdote. At one particular medical school, in order to test how important was cycling really, or am I deluding myself?
Right.
We did an experiment with cycling, and we did an experiment without cycling. And when we took the cycling out, the mice died.
Yeah, but cycling was the whole thing you were doing. So how could you do it with taking it out?
We'd had someone sitting there with their hands around a cage.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And you just...
Everything was the same, in the same place, in the same lab, and everything was identical except the person was not cycling.
Yeah, the physical stuff was the same.
Yep.
And what you did is confirm that the physical is all practically irrelevant.
Probably, yeah. Probably.
Which means if it's really irrelevant, you could get results at a distance.
Oh, and we've done this at 2,000 miles and replicated it.
Okay. So it really is irrelevant.
It really
and
is.
It comes down to where's your attention, I suppose.
And the last thing you want is your attention focused on the healee.
Okay.
You don't
Okay.
want that.
So your attention is just not the critical part, if I'm understanding you, is where your attention is not, because you're not putting your attention on the cycling when it's working.
You're letting go and let it take its course. If I'm riding a bike, I'm not thinking about riding a bike.
Right. But when you're learning to ride the bike, you need some attention on that.
I pay attention, I'm mindful, and then eventually, if I master the bike, I become mindless, and then I do other things while I'm riding the bike.
And then riding the bike works after that.
You're better at a bike riding when you don't pay attention.
So one of the big issues is if you can picture yourself in a scene or a scene happening, or in the case where there's a healee, you picture something about the healee being healed, like the mice, I guess.
I wouldn't.
No?
I'd up to the healee if they want to do it. It would be very useful. It turns out to be very useful for the healee to also cycle. And let them fix themselves, or at the very least, let them put in some effort and help you fix them.
But then ideally, they don't need you at all, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. The goal would be always to be irrelevant.
So one of the things to do with this system is to teach it to people to heal themselves.
Yes.
But when I talked to you before, you said you don't have such good results trying to do it on yourself, right?
Cycling for yourself is you're getting your red Tesla, you're getting your physical stuff fixed, you're getting, all of that stuff is going on. When you talked to me before and I said healing is very difficult to do on yourself, if I'm putting my hands on a particular spot on my body and it's hard to detach. And so because then you have a tendency, you take yourself quite personally, and you have a tendency to think about you or focus on you or wish for you or want for you. It's hard to just let nature take its course, and healing is letting nature take its course.
But it would be really useful to be able to do it on yourself, right? That's what you're teaching the other people.
And I teach folks how to do it and also how to do it on themselves. And it turns out, even if it's hard to put your hands on yourself and get a robust response, it is possible to put your healing intention into stuff. And stuff can be physical objects, the stuff can be organic, the stuff can be inorganic, the stuff can be a mouse. And to treat, for example, a piece of cotton and then put the cotton on yourself works wonderfully.
You know, the question that comes up right away with that, since you know that you can have a healing effect on somebody else at a distance, and since at a distance you don't have to put your hands because your arms aren't that long to reach 2,000, for most people, 2,000 miles.
Yeah.
So that means putting your hand on yourself wasn't necessary anyway. And if you could get into the mentality healing yourself as if yourself, this is just an idea to bypass the cotton, okay?
Yeah.
It's like if you could get the mindset of treating yourself just like you do another person at a distance with no hands and no conscious focus on it, I'm just wondering if that could work directly.
I suspect it would. I'm just saying it's hard to do. It's easier to treat a piece of cotton and put the cotton on yourself than it is to really detach that much. And you might be exactly on the money, you might be partially on the money. There's a lot of room here for trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah, it's so subtle. I mean, a lot of it is not even appropriate for English language exactly.
No, I would completely agree. Completely agree. It's hard, and it's hard to put in terms of variables and to take it into the lab and to test it.
Exactly.
And you may be losing something in the translation as you take stuff into the lab. But I would say it's really, really interesting to test your own thoughts and your ideas, and that's where you actually learn to become extremely humble. Yeah. But I think I've understood when I test it. It turns out I don't really understand it that much.
No, but the nice thing about that is whatever power is really doing the healing, which is pretty clearly not coming from our own ego.
It's not.
That power is not incompetent.
No.
Whatever it's called, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's annoying, but it's not incompetent.
Right, but it's also capable of probably any kind of healing.
Well, I've seen some interesting things, and I've heard some interesting stories. Interesting things and interesting stories are interesting, but they don't necessarily make a pattern.
Exactly. And that translates into usability.
Yep.
So if you start by trying to quantify, or at least describe more clearly, the process of moving the scene that you're choosing to be part of your cycle from forebrain or whatever that is, where you put your normal full attention on it, to wherever that is that you consign the cycling to, that you don't have to worry about it anymore. If the more you could get clear on the process of moving it from those two parts of your mind between one to the other, I mean, that would be really useful, wouldn't it?
That's my working hypothesis. And so when I give a workshop and teach people how to do this, or have some publications on how to do it, it is always, yes, that's essentially what you just said. What are the gimmicks? What are the ways to do it? And I suspect all techniques are gimmicks, trying to do exactly what you just said. And I don't say gimmick like it's a bad thing, or it's
right.
It's devious. It's just that you're trying to get out of the way. And so I think cycling is probably an extremely effective technique for getting out of the way. But it's not the be all and end all. It's not sacred. It's nothing like that.
Right. But whatever makes it work is really potentially valuable, right?
It's potentially valuable. And my question is always, okay, now that it works, how do I make it better?
Yeah. And what are the applications that might not have been thought of yet?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, for example, instead of only healing a person or an animal or something like that, could you heal a situation?
I suspect so.
And you talked about permission. So I'm assuming that if the person gives you permission, you're free to do it.
Oh, yeah. I have, just as my ethical guideline, without exception, you have no right to interfere in someone else's life.
Yeah.
And so it's obvious to you, what our greatest superpower that we possess as a species is knowing what's best for everybody else.
Well, there might be some errors in judgment in that.
But that's, we're sure. I mean, anybody listening already knows that they can look at anybody and know how to make their life better.
Well, especially this gets much more pronounced if you're in an official position of authority as well.
Yeah, but either way, whether you're in authority or not in authority, everybody knows how to make everybody else's life better.
Yeah.
I say, go make them better your own way, but don't include them in this system.
Right. But interestingly enough, if you make things better in your own life without permission, you're making it better for many other people too.
Yeah, but at least don't fixing the world, deliberately. against
their will, right. So if somebody, there's so much room for research and experimentation. I mean, you'd need 1,000 lifetimes to really do it thoroughly. Yep. But what I'm thinking is, if somebody is in a really contentious situation, is in a big fight and it's getting dangerous, and you want to make that better, bring it into harmony, just like physical healing, and you have their permission, I wonder what would happen if you're able to actually cycle with that.
Probably good things.
And when somebody comes to you or anyone using this system and says, please help me with this problem, do you put some scene connected to their issue into your cycle?
You can. You can, and there are what we just call practice groups all over the world doing this, and they meet together regularly, and they help each other. And so you go and you sign on, and now in the age of Zoom, you sign on, or you used to meet live, and you do this and that. But there could be, say, 25 people or more hanging out together, and they say, would you put this on your list for me? Would you cycle for this for me? Would you? And they're explicitly asking, and the groups become really bonded, and they're helping each other and doing all sorts of things. It's kind of fun.
So for each person in a group of 25 that's doing that, if they have time to pay attention to each person and what they want help with,
Yeah.
that would create 25 new scenes in their cycle, right?
Yeah, and they don't need to be the same thing because the scene itself doesn't matter. I'm driving down the street in a red Tesla. So what? You could have a vision of me in a red Tesla parked in a parking lot. It doesn't make any difference.
Right, but something about that situation being all resolved and healed and harmonized and
Yeah.
ideal.
Ideal in the sense of this is what I want and I'm asking other people for help. Permission is given.
Okay, and you absolutely no micromanagement about how it's supposed to happen.
No. Never get involved with when, never get involved with how.
Okay, good.
You're simply going to the what. And so everything on the list is a what, and you either have it or you don't. So I got my red Tesla, I didn't get my red Tesla. It's testable.
Right, and it's some scene with the red Tesla that to you means clearly you got it.
Yes.
Whatever that scene might be.
When I get it, I take it off my list.
Okay.
Nothing on the list actually exists now.
Right. And so when you first started this, what scene did you choose for the mice?
Toasting in my living room, a successful experiment.
Okay.
Had nothing to do with cancer. It had nothing to do with mice.
Yeah, the mice weren't in the scene.
No, I don't care about the mice. I wanted a successful experiment.
So it's not the picture of the scene that matters. It's how you feel about the picture, right?
It's the place that would be recognizable that I'm eventually going to get to.
And the significance of that has an emotional connection to the successful resolution of whatever the problem is, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And at the time when you did it with the mice, did you have a whole bunch of other scenes that were about other stuff?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, cycling is about stuff. Cycling is about circumstances. Cycling is about situations. Cycling is about, as long as you can concretize it, recognize it, it can be something trivial. I want a pen. I mean, that's stupid, but I want a pen. Well,
Sure.
Do I have a pen or don't I have a pen? I want a red Tesla. Do I have it or don't I have it? I want mice to be cured. Do I have it or don't I have it?
Some people would call this,
and empirically observable.
some people would call this manifesting.
Yeah, I don't know. That's past my pay grade. If it is, it is. I don't know.
Well, yeah, except you're doing it, but
I'm doing it, but yeah.
everybody's doing it in mostly negative ways all the time. And what occurs to me is even though everyone would ask, how can we start this cycling process? I'm pretty sure everyone's already doing it. And that's what the things are appearing in their life, not always positive, from the cycling they're doing now. That's a hypothesis.
Yeah, don't know. Don't know.
Yeah. So in a way, the whole thing is, how do you make the cycling conscious enough to replace it with pictures of things you actually want? And then how do you put it back out of consciousness and keep it going?
Take some effort, take some work.
And you're not just, it's not enough to just forget the scenes.
No.
That doesn't put them out of consciousness
Nope.
into the right place.
You never forget anything.
So is there anything you can just say as clues that people can then fill in by doing the investigation themselves about the process of putting each of those images from the initial conscious construction and selection into that other department where it cycles?
Well, we do it just by practice and increasing the speed so you're going faster than you can. When you start, let's say you're making up 20 images and you've spent some time wallowing in all of the images to have that emotional component.
Make sure each one has feeling, basically, right?
Behind it, but then red Tesla, it goes flying by. You're not dwelling on it. It's not a daydream. It's not a fantasy about driving a red Tesla. Fantasize on your own time. So whenever you're feeling anything about anything,
yeah,
that emotional stimulus drives the cycling. And the things on the list start going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And as they go faster and faster, your conscious mind can't keep up with it anymore.
Okay, so you said whenever you're feeling anything about anything,
Positive or negative.
it drives the cycling.
Emotion drives the cycling.
Can you say more about that? Because that's an interesting.
I'm looking at something out in the world and it's ticking me off to no end. Well,
Okay.
I'm feeling a negative emotion. Well, I am conscious of my negative experience and my negative feeling, and that emotional power is now the fuel for the cycling, which is all, of course, positive for me. If I'm looking and I'm having some wonderful circumstance, situation, emotion, I'm happy as a clam. That too drives it. It makes no difference what the emotion is.
Okay, now I suspect, and this is a question too, that correlation, using emotion as the power source to run the cycling, that is happening because you intend it to happen. It's not just didn't happen haphazardly.
It happens by practice.
Yeah, but your intention is telling yourself, if I feel anything,
Yeah.
then it's going to drive the cycling.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the learning process. So I would say, yeah, we tell each other, and maybe we set that up as a system.
Yeah, because I think the reason it happens is because you told it to happen, basically. It's not
entirely possible.
Okay, all right. And so once that's clear, then the practice part is, do you start with a really small number of images to make it easier, or do you get all the images right from the beginning and just move them slow?
If I'm teaching a workshop and you have only a finite period of time to try to come up with images, if you only have 8, well, you work with 8, but you know that 8 isn't enough.
So what's enough, 30, 25, something like that?
Well, we're shooting for a goal for 20, but it's not sacred. It doesn't mean 20 and you're done. It means 20. It's interesting when you ask people, you say to them basically, here's Aladdin's lamp.
Right.
What do you want? And there's no limit. But shoot for 20 things you want that will be recognizable when you get it. They get all twitchy because they say, oh, I can't want 20 things. But if you actually tell the story of Aladdin's lamp, and you only get 3 wishes, everybody has the same wish for the third wish, and that is, I wish I had more wishes.
Exactly.
And I have no limit. 94 is the record.
Yeah, you got around this thing in the story where the genie comes out and said, ha, 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 you didn't think of this. Yeah, you wanted a new car, but you didn't say it wouldn't run over you or something.
Exactly,
like
yeah, that's right. It was the little things that mattered.
Okay, so if you're in a situation like in your family, that a lot of people live in dysfunctional families and everybody's fighting, right?
Yeah.
And you say, and you don't know it's illegal or anything, and you're not trying to do anything bad to anybody, and you say, what I want is harmony in our family. Is that illegal?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless your family wants it.
They'd have to say it's okay.
Yep.
Basically. Interesting.
So, I mean, as basic as, would it be horrible if we didn't fight? You know what I mean?
All right. What is that? Is that saying that wishing for harmony in your family as part of the cycling, that's illegal?
It's illegal without permission.
Where did the knowledge of that come from?
That it's illegal?
Yes.
I don't know. I can never remember a time when it wasn't.
Well, but you discovered it at some point.
I mean, I don't ever remember it ever. I mean, literally ever, that you could put someone else on the list without their permission.
Well, how did you first become aware of that?
It's one of those. Has to be. I mean, you don't have the right to screw around with someone else's life. I mean, there's exceptions to that. If you're a parent, you got a little kid. The little kid's sick. You don't ask the kid for permission.
Right.
You own the kid.
Okay. The other thing and I'm questioning this because, not to be difficult, but in science, it's one of the principles is you question everything, even the things that you should never question.
Yeah.
Especially those sometimes.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, when you talk to, I'm looking at this principle.
Yeah.
And the applications of it. And when you talk to somebody, you influence their life without permission.
Sure.
Hopefully for the better.
Hopefully.
If you're a benevolent type individual.
Yep.
And that doesn't feel like it's illegal.
Right.
And so the question is, when you're talking to somebody, yeah, you're physically vibrating the air with the sound of your voice making words, but you're doing more than that. Your intent is going and interacting with them
Yep.
in a way they may have no idea about,
Yep.
let alone permission.
Yep.
And I think if you have bad intent towards somebody in any way, that has negative consequences.
I think it has negative consequences for you.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe for them, depending on whether they accept it.
Oh, yeah. Do I think you could harm? I don't think of any reason. I can't think of any reason you wouldn't be able to deliberately harm.
Unfortunately, we see it happening all the time.
Yeah. So I don't think this is an exception.
And like cycling, it works at a distance.
Yeah.
People can't, people think it's silly, these belief systems and religions about blessing and cursing people.
Yeah.
But they're real.
Yeah.
And they, stronger people are less affected, but they're actually putting out a force that has a positive or negative effect.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is the negative one not only hurts the person who sends it, but it potentially hurts the recipient as well.
Entirely possible.
Right? And there's an illegal feeling to that, like, don't do that.
Yep.
It's the basis of the golden rule and all these other things that are based in consciousness.
It's also the basis of a lot of the Jain religion.
Yeah, but before the religion, even if nobody ever read a book, this rule exists.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm asking here, not necessarily that we can get an answer, but that clearly applies to malevolent intent. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
But when you wish for whatever's best for somebody without micromanaging, without saying how it has to happen, whether that's illegal is another question.
Yeah. And my rule, which I can't remember not having, by all means help other people, but with permission.
Okay, so anybody that you can't, if that's universally true, then anyone that you can't reach to get permission, you can't send good wishes even, or benevolent energy.
You can do all your good wishes, but if you're playing with my gimmick, and I'm acknowledging it to be a gimmick, don't use my gimmick to hurt somebody, and hurt somebody isn't an objective thing. Hurt somebody is getting them against what they want for them.
Okay, so if someone is in, this is just a hypothetical situation, if they're totally depressed by what they see happening in the world and they're suicidal and they want to just kill themselves and that's what they want consciously for themselves, do we look at the potential that subconsciously they really want things to be better? We can't assume that, is what you're saying, right? And
we can't assume that. No.
Let them do whatever they want to do.
If I have a piece of cotton, which will help somebody, and it'll produce healing as a consequence of using the cotton, they have the absolute right not to use the cotton.
Sure.
I wouldn't feel rejected in any way, shape, or form.
Interesting. Okay. So, but you have these groups meeting now, and I assume they're open, people can join them.
They have to, the only way to join them is to be practicing. And so you've taken your own course with the CDs, or you've come to a workshop, or you've done something like that. And then they become networks of folks who are helping each other and playing and doing all that. We had here recently, we just put out a thing to say, let's all, just for fun, let's all cycle together. So a couple hundred people signed up right away. Let's all cycle together. We just had a big, happy group cycling meeting for an hour. It was just kind of fun, and just waving to people and hanging out. Anybody want anything? What can we cycle for? How do we help?
Okay, so it's cycling together, but with the open request line, right?
Oh yeah, leave the request line open. Put your mugshot up there if you want. You want us to try to fix you, and if you want to help. If you don't want to help, don't help.
And what do? You put a little line describing what you want or something?
Oh, it depends on the group. In the group, sometimes they say, "This is exactly what I like. Please help me with this."
Okay.
In some of the groups, they put pictures of people who have asked for help, and we don't even need to know what the problem is. They just have the picture up there going, take what you want,
Yeah, interesting. So what's happening at the moment? I assume all the workshops are online rather than live. Is that right?
Workshops are online. I'm starting one Saturday. It's coming out of LA, but the first one we have planned, I think, for live, I actually don't know when it is. It might be April. It's in New Jersey. And you can look on the website if you're interested in these things. Just go to bengstonresearch.com. But the plug was pulled a year ago. Nobody goes anywhere. I was actually in LA a year ago when they shut the state down, and we had to scramble. We had to scramble to get back.
You escaped, fortunately.
Huh?
Wow. You escaped, but barely.
We scrambled around and grabbed a seat. It turns out it wasn't hard to get a seat. Nobody was on the plane.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So we had an entire plane to ourselves.
Wow.
Everything had just shut down. It was mid-March.
So you're going to do the New Jersey one online if you can't do it live?
No, we don't schedule these things. It's really somebody decides to host it. Basically we show up. We only do 4 or 5 of these a year.
Okay.
And if somebody wants to do it, then they say, "Here, this is what we'll do, and here's how we're going to do it," and all that stuff. So I don't think live is going to happen. Again, live is just better.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a pain, but it's better. So we've traveled to all over the place. We gave Big One, for example, in the Netherlands. But now we can't meet anymore. There was a group of physicians who want us to go teach them how to heal, but we can't get there. COVID happens.
So do you think that group is going to set it up online and try to do it anyway, or what do you think?
I don't know. Some people have pulled the plug and just gotten pessimistic. Some people have moved from live to Zoom, and some people are just saying, we'll do it. By April, we'll roll the dice and see if something happens.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, at this point, what are you going to do? It's COVID happens.
Yeah. So all of those updates are on the site, I guess, bengstonresearch.com, right?
I think so. Yeah. I don't really look at it that much, but I think it's they're probably there. You can also read a whole bunch of my papers and academic papers and schedules and things like that, and tons of research going on right now.
Are those papers on the website?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's maybe 30 of them, not all of them, but maybe 30 of them, a selection of them.
Do you have some video stuff on there too, or mostly just?
I don't know. Probably. I'm told.
Okay. People
have told me they've watched me give a talk on this, that, or the other thing. I've never actually seen me give a talk.
Okay.
I've just never watched one.
Okay.
I'm just not that interested.
It seems like one of the good things for people to do if they're new and want to get into this would be to buy the CDs, right?
They might, if they want to learn the technique. The CDs are the way to go. I have it's a 10-year-old book, but it's called The Energy Cure, and that's just a story of how I ended up here. But it's 10 years old. It's pretty out of date, and I've got some pressure to write another one or a follow-up, but I haven't done it yet.
Right. But the CDs are the real way to get to be able to
learn the technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are available on the website?
I think they're available from Sounds True Publishers, or you can get them on Amazon. And the CD set is called, what is it called? Hands-on Healing, a Training Course in the Energy Cure. It's an actual training course. So at the end, you should be able to hit the ground running and practice the stuff.
Okay. And hands-on healing is just when you're in person with somebody, but you can do it at a distance too.
Yeah. Hands-on healing is just the title that the Sounds True came up with.
Okay.
I didn't like the title The Energy Cure. And they said, we don't care what you like.
That's our department, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thanks for your input. But
Yeah. We're going to really consider it very strongly, right?
Yeah. Thank you, but get away from me. Yeah.
Right. Neat. Okay, so are you doing anything personally with all this as far as the public is concerned, other than workshops? Or if somebody wants to contact either you or anyone who's doing this, that is.
Yeah, I get many requests. Many requests. I have a group of people. I don't know. It's probably about a dozen now who have been doing this for a long time and have an enormously successful track record of fixing people. My work is primarily in the lab. These people are clinicians. They're better at it. The clinical approach to things. They know the techniques. They've mastered the techniques. I suspect they're better than me anyway. These are, and a lot of them were healers who came to this because they couldn't do certain things. They weren't affecting it. And so they do it, now they do this because it, gets them over the hump. So I farm out the humans.
And how do people get in touch with them? Through you? Is that the way to do it?
Yeah, I'm not going to out them. They're not on the website.
Okay.
But if you can contact me on the website and just say, here's the problem. This is what I need fixed. Who do you have? We'll flip you back a contact or 2 or 5 or 6.
Okay, and do they all work in their individual different ways, or is there a protocol?
They all do cycling. That's the thing that changed them. But we have people in Europe, various parts of Europe. We have people in various parts of the States. Most of the people do things from a distance. So actually, there's some clinicians who won't do you live. Which is pretty interesting because they don't like the distraction of a body.
You mean they don't want to see you in person?
No, they don't want to see you in person at all.
Okay.
They'll talk to you on the phone. They'll put on headphones and walk around the house and talk to you and treat you, but they don't want you, physically in front of them.
Okay, and they each have different various prices they charge to do this, I assume, right?
I think so, yeah. And then some charge like a lawyer by 10-minute blocks or 20-minute blocks, and some do hour things, and it varies all over the place.
Whatever they feel.
I don't know exactly what they're charging, but anyone that I've recommended before who overcharges, I've pulled from the list.
How do you decide whether it's an overcharge or not?
When someone says, if I even think about you during the day, I'm charging you for the time I'm thinking about you.
Oh.
You're out.
It's like lawyers that sub it out to $10 an hour people and charge $300 an hour for all that.
Yeah, and if you're doing that, I don't want you on my team.
Right.
If you won't treat someone unless they have a lot of money, you're not on my team.
Yeah, good.
So it's
it'd be good to make this available to everybody who wants.
Anything that we do has to be sliding scale, has to be, you're not gouging, and the goal here is not maximizing profit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not money profit anyway. It's maximizing healing profit of just getting better.
But some people go squirrely when they're filled with self-importance that look at what I can do. Well,
yeah, wow, that's worth a few billion right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly. You're not on my team, though. Don't use my name.
Right. Pretty neat. Trying to think of anything critical that we haven't covered. What holes did we leave?
I don't know. I mean, the thing I'm working on now is how to make healing conventional.
What does that mean?
That means, can I store it, use it like a battery, and then make it widely available and widely produced?
Like something you sell in a bottle or something, you mean?
Yeah, so I got a bottle of healing, and here it is, and it will reproduce. And I was just on this, doing lab tests all over the place right now, and I was just on with somebody from one of my labs, and we're looking for indicators and tests and things like that to really nail this down. But the question is if there's an inexhaustible supply of people in pain out there, anybody listening could learn the techniques, but how many people can you treat? And
that depends whether you think that depends on how many, possibly, I should say. That may depend on how many you think you can treat.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either. So I don't know, but even if you're working 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, there's a lot of people out there who need help.
Yeah.
How do I scale it?
That's a massive understatement.
Yeah.
Have you ever had somebody that asks you for help with a non-physical problem, and so you obviously have their permission, and it gets into a combination of psychological or situational problems?
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a sore shoulder or something like that?
No, not at all. No.
Can you comment on, just so people know what we're talking about, what kind of thing that might look like?
Well, people talk about situations of relationships. People talk about states of mind. I mean, this particular technique, I don't know if we're veering off here a little bit, but I don't know, for example, whether someone who's depressed, you can diagnose depression as psychological or physical.
Could be both.
And maybe both. Yeah, exactly. We're very good on depression. I mean, very good.
Okay.
We've taken people who haven't been out of bed in 20 years. They respond very quickly. We're very good with all, bipolar. We're very good with Alzheimer's. We're very good with a whole bunch of things.
You talked about relationships. You would have to have permission involved in, right?
Yes.
If you could work on that.
Always. Yep. But
If
works on relationships, works on physical things, works on emotional things, works on a lot of stuff.
Right. But if somebody comes to you and says, my relationship is terrible and the other person won't talk to me, you can't help them, right?
Nope. I know someone like that, where one of the couple wants, and the other couple, they're living under the same house, for crying out loud, they won't talk to them. It's just bizarre. But if this person is convinced or on a mission to not communicate, it's not nobody's business, at least from this point of view, to make them communicate.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting dynamics. And what I was going to say, since all of the connections between people that are interested in getting help for something need to go through you, we just talked about the number of people that can be. How do you personally handle large amounts like that?
With difficulty?
Yeah.
I just do, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it gets too many, you'll figure out what to do instead.
Yeah. Well, once we can bottle it, that'll help a lot.
That will, yeah. And then you have to make sure that there's a way to tell the genuine item.
Yep, working on that too.
Yeah, neat. Okay, well, I want to stay up to date with your ongoing research. It sounds exciting and high priority project to see go for as far as possible soon.
Yep.
So sorry about this, guys. We're recording this and I'm losing internet intermittently, so I apologize. I think where it got cut off is that I was just thanking Dr. Bengston for giving us the time in his busy schedule, which may get a lot busier according to what we're hearing here with all the requests, and just saying that I want to keep up with everything that he's doing, that you're doing, Dr. Bengston. I think it's really significant. It's one of a handful of demonstrated healing techniques that aren't just theories, that actually worked. And they're not given nearly enough recognition, in my opinion. But recognition or not, they can still get to the people that need them. And right now, you're the key liaison point for that to happen. So just encouraging everybody to go to bengstonresearch.com, learn more about it, read the papers, and if you're in a position of needing to get referred to somebody, use the contact form. So I think that's pretty much the summary, and just wanted to thank you, and I hope that we can do follow-ups to this and keep people up to date on what's happening, especially with the uncertainty of, the live sessions versus the online alternatives and stuff like that. Plus, I just think it's super interesting, and I want to keep up with it if you're willing.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
We'll stay in touch. Okay, you guys, there goes William Bengston, Dr. Bengston, and hopefully you can see why I wanted to get him on and thought he'd be a really interesting and relevant guest. And again, the main reason for me was that he's one of the few that I know of who's actually demonstrated in practice that it's not just some crazy theory that you can affect outside so-called reality with the inside state of your intent, focus, emotional state, etc. And these things are tied together with the basic understanding of how quantum physics works, or more accurately, the quantum physics understanding of how the universe works, and especially the part of it that we're in at the moment. And the reason that that's important and not just an interesting set of theories is that, I don't know if you've noticed, if you looked around in the world these days, we got a real serious situation. And I don't think at this point that it can be fixed by just more fighting. I could be wrong, but that's my feeling about it. We need something more powerful. And as Einstein said, not trying to fix the problem by staying in the same state of consciousness that created it. And the only thing I can think of that has more power and can be applied by anybody and everybody that is aware of it is hinted at by what Bengston is doing, Dr. Bengston. Not that that's the whole answer. He's one of the few guys that has actually demonstrated the ability to change the outside world by just silent internal changes that you can make in your own mind. In your own emotional state especially, that's what gives it power. It's related to what we're trying to do in Planetary Healing Club, a little bit different in that the Bengston method is working on this cycling system, and it's all based on that. And they're getting really good results, as he said. Whereas in Planetary Healing Club, we're starting with the basis of the suppressed knowledge of self-healing and how to avoid many of the usual phases of aging and degenerative disease and immunity without the usual interventions. And you know which ones I'm talking about, where they stick this hollow needle in you and put poisonous things in you and say, this is really going to keep you healthy now. Better than that. And then we get into the deeper aspect of consciousness, like we've been talking about with Dr. Bengston, but a little bit different approach, and we're doing a lot of interesting stuff in there. And you're welcome to join us if you feel like it. It's accessed through planetaryhealingclub.com. And if you have questions about whether it's worth your time and in your particular focus and life situation and all that, you're welcome to use the contact forms and ask whatever you want to. And we usually get to all those fairly quickly. Anyway, Dr. Bengston's work can be kept up with at bengstonresearch.com. That's BENGSTON research.com. And he says he's putting things in there as they progress. His research is going on full speed right now, and he's got people working all over the world who are using his method and, from what he says, getting really good results with healing certain kinds of conditions. And he's saying, contact him through bengstonresearch.com if you want to be part of that. And he'll refer you to an appropriate practitioner. So it sounds worth a resource worth knowing about for sure. And then keep up with us on the platforms that we're still on and things like that at lostartsradio.com, lostartsplural.radio.com. And there's all kinds of, at least at this point, we're keeping up with it, putting videos and articles up there every day about all kinds of interesting things, including aspects of the world situation, since it's developing so quickly right now. And if you have the resources and you want to keep us on the air, please support us. We don't have commercials or anything like that. Hoping that this is valuable to you. And there ways to do that are at lostartsradio.com. There's a donate button. There's also one at lostartsresearchinstitute.org. And there's also subscribestar.com/lostartsradio that was set up, and it works great. So any of those options. And then to overcome the shadow banning and censorship and things like that, if you share the shows and the videos of various kinds, that would be really helpful too. So thank you for anything you can do in that direction. Again, Planetary Healing Club meets once a week on Saturday. That's a way for live interaction. And I get to share what I've run into in the course of 50 plus years of researching all this stuff in health that you can use yourself, and also deeper aspects of consciousness related to what we're talking about with Dr. Bengston today. So you might find that very practical and useful, I hope. And then we have a Saturday show called Lost Arts Radio Live, which is about current events. And that's up there every week, and all the archives are available free. So feel free to make use of that as well and share it, please. So that's about it. Give us your feedback about ideas for shows, guests that you'd like to see on, and anything that you want to get into. And those of you in Planetary Healing Club in different parts of the world, some of you can't make it to the live meetings because of the time zone issues. And for that, you can listen to the archives, which go out with the Planetary Healing Club newsletter every Sunday. And it's got a way to listen to all the archives that you didn't get in the live meeting, and then send email feedback or things that you'd like to see brought up in the next live meeting, and we'll do that. So I think that covers just about all of it. I think Dr. Bengston's research is a clue, incredibly valuable in itself, and just giving you a hint of what's really possible. And that even though on the personality, ego level, we're full of all kinds of flaws and limitations, what flows through us is not. And the more we can open up to that and learn about it, practical application in life every day, the better it is. So take good care of yourself, and that's always our encouragement. It's a way that you can be of most value to everybody else. Get yourself in as good shape as you can physically, and do the internal work, and let's see what we can do, because there's need for it right now. We need to turn the world situation around as soon as possible. So thanks for your help with that. And thanks for the time of being here with us. I appreciate it very much. And we'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Take care. Bye.